All right, people, Q&A time. And a happy new year to everyone as well. This is going to go out New Year's Day. Just so you know, it is 20 past 4 on New Year's Eve and there are 62 comments. Now, some of them have replies, so I would imagine it's kind of going to be, some are going to probably be a bit less than 62 questions. So we're going to do this Q&A. So any comment that's left after 20 past 4, I haven't ignored you. You've just left it after the time I've recorded it. So I like these Q&A sessions. I do. I only do them now and again. And I normally do them when things are a little bit quiet, or, I'm looking to get some content lined up, as in, it's quiet. I might be going away and stuff like that. So I'm not going away. I'm going back to London next week. But other than that, it's business as usual. So let's get into it. First question. I'm doing it. I filtered this newest to oldest. So I'm going to be going from oldest to newest. It's one of the good perks of YouTube that just set the comments like that. So, first question. My question is, what is your favorite small hall venue? You don't have to have gone there. Could just be one you've seen on stream where a fight is. Mine is York Hall. Well, I would have to say the York Hall is... I've been to the York Hall and I loved it. It's probably neck and neck, the York Hall with the Ulster Hall up in Belfast. Now, I haven't been to that one yet, but my days, the atmosphere in there looks incredible. It doesn't actually look too dissimilar to the York Hall. I would imagine the York Hall is probably a slight bit bigger, I would imagine, just by the look of it. But my days, I've seen a couple of shows. I remember Paddy Barnes fought Jay Harris up there years ago now, about 5 years ago. And the atmosphere was incredible. And oh, God, one of the first interviews I ever did in this channel was Jay Harris. And he said as much the same. He said it was absolutely incredible, the atmosphere there. So that looks like an arena where I'd love to get to. I'd love to just go to just see a show there. Just a small hall show, and there's primarily small hall shows to go there. That and the York Hall. Now, I've been to the York Hall in Bethnal Green. And honestly, it's got something special about it. It really does. You are unbelievably close to ringside. I went with Ade. David Diamante was with us. So was Akabarak. We all went. It was Harlem Eubank versus... I don't even remember the guy's name. It was some obscure opponent about a year or so ago. And it was just... It's a great little venue. It really is. And I think that's the thing about small hall shows. They're not... And that's why I love when big promoters put them on there. It's not like an O2. It's not a big mega centre. I've been to the OVO in Wembley, and again, that's actually a lot bigger than it looks on TV. Same with the Copper Box as well, actually. But there's something about those little small hall shows where you're all just kind of boxed in. You almost feel like you're on top of the ring, and if you're up in the kind of high end, you probably kind of are almost on top of the ring. There's something special about them, and boxing needs them. It absolutely needs them. And venues like the York Hall, they are unbelievably special. The Ulster Hall up in Belfast, which again, I knocked the mic there. You might get some background noise there a second ago. But honestly, the Ulster Hall up in Belfast and the York Hall, those two spring to mind. The Brentwood Centre in Essex looks good. And some of those ones in like Bolton and Manchester. But honestly, those two there, they really stick out to me as the two main ones. One I've been to and the other I'd love to go to. My question, big up to Kieran, my question is, have you played the Boxing Undisputed game, and if so, what are your thoughts? I haven't, to be honest with you, man. I'm not as big a gamer nowadays as I used to be. I was never a big gamer, truth be told. I remember when I was a teenager, when I was... How old was I? Was I 16, 15? Might have been 15. When Call of Duty, I think it was 16 actually, when Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 came out. And I played the hell out of that game. I remember being in school playing that game, and that was 2009. Well, it was really 2010 when we were playing that game a lot. And I remember playing with friends in school at the time. And like, you got to bear in mind, right, playing online games back in 2010, it was still okay, and it was still good. It's not what it is now, where it's crazy now. Back then, I used to play with some guys from school, and one of the guys in Swords, he had a really weak connection. Like, when it worked, it was fine, but basically, if you rang his house, it would knock his whole connection off. So we'd be playing Modern Warfare 2. He'd be going for a nuke, 25 kill streaks. And even though he'd be on our team, someone would do it. We'd have to. We'd ring the house. It would take about 10 minutes before he roots it back up and gets back online. And he'd come online with the mic and he'd be just, go on, which one of you did it? Just tell me, which one of you did it? We used to have such fun. You don't get that nowadays. You don't get that now. And believe me, oh boy, some of those I was good at Modern Warfare 2. I was really good at that game. And I still play it now from time to time. And obviously, well, you haven't played it in years, you're rusty as hell. But when I was in my prime at that game, I was really good. And honestly, man, some of the messages I got off people, like voice notes, death threats, everything off people on that game, those were kind of the days where I was playing a lot. I was a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of Assassin's Creed because I like history, so and I like open world games. So Assassin's Creed history, just brilliant. There you go. Although their latest releases I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game that I've enjoyed since Origins. That's a long time ago. Didn't like Odyssey. Didn't mind Valhalla, but that's because I was watching The Last Kingdom at the time, so it kind of hit in well with that. Didn't really like Mirage, and I'm probably not going to get Shadow. I'm probably not going to get that game. So yeah, I haven't got an Assassin's Creed game since Origins that I've liked, which is a shame because prior to that they were doing pretty okay. So in terms of your question on the Undisputed game, not really. I played Fight Night Champions when it came out in 2011. Didn't really like that game. Played it, but didn't really like it. I probably will at some point get the game, but I'm not hearing rave reviews about it. So we'll wait and see. Whoops. I thought I unfiltered the chat. I didn't. Deep Bola. Is Alexander the Great Usyk the greatest of all time? No. I wouldn't go as far as saying he's the greatest of all time. I would say of this era of heavyweights, he is. Is he one of the greatest of all time? Yes. Resume, I would not have him as an all-time great. He's definitely not out of the running or anything like that. He's in contention. But when you look at the likes of Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis, the resume that they've built, I can't say he is. Saying that, I don't know necessarily if he'd fought, like Lennox Lewis always says, he'd have trouble with me. Lennox Lewis would have trouble with him too. So would Muhammad Ali. So he is one of the greats, but I wouldn't have him as the greatest of all time, no. Hasim says, possible fantasy matchups for 2025. Beterbiev versus Usyk and Canelo versus Crawford at 168. Bivol has spoke about going down, maybe Bivol versus Crawford if Crawford wins. I mean, like, I know Turkey has mentioned the possibility of those fights. Listen, Beterbiev, Usyk, I wouldn't really see that fight as being necessarily all that competitive, truth be told. I think that Alexander Usyk would dwarf Artur Beterbiev, and I just don't see him winning that fight. And likewise with Canelo, I think Canelo at 168, I just don't think Crawford is big enough. I mean, Crawford was weighing 170 in the ring against Madrimov. So he's 2 pounds over the super middleweight limit. Canelo is rehydrating well into the 180s. The weight difference, the jump is just too big, in my opinion, for that. And the same with Bivol. Yeah, Bivol's not the biggest light heavyweight I've ever seen, but him against Crawford, no. So I don't doubt that Turkey will try and do Crawford Canelo. I would watch it and I do videos on it. But I would sooner see Crawford call it a day, because I think he's pretty much got one foot out the door when that's the only fight that's really keeping him in boxing. That kind of says really all you need to know. And I mean, obviously he'd give his A game against Canelo, no doubt, but I hope we don't get any of those fantasy fights, truth be told, mate, to be honest with you. Junior Jones, does Gervonta Davis go near Ebony Bridges washing line still? Man, he's abandoned Ebony Bridges for Tyson Fury's. Man, that's what Gervonta Davis has done. Do I have a boyfriend? Definitely not. I don't go that way. It's definitely not. Really enjoy your content, G-Man. Thanks for keeping it 100%. I appreciate that. Jorel Hayes, or Hay, I think is how you say that name. I appreciate that. G-Man, my real name is Thomas. I might have asked you this on a live before, But what advice would you give to someone wanting to start a boxing channel? I love Ade, Hatman, yourself, and Del Boy would love to make a go of YouTube. Well, big up Thomas, big yourself up, and good names you mentioned there, by the way. Yeah. So I've been asked this question a few times. I'm not 100% sure about yourself, but I've always given the same advice, and I'll always stick by it. If you want to do it, just do it. But you need to. I think anyone doing YouTube in general needs to go in, with their eyes open. But in particular, if you're looking, I would assume you mentioned, boxing channel. I thought you did there. Yeah, especially with a sport like boxing, which has a very, very niche following. It really does. People like say, yo, your channel is, 22,000, you pull in like 300,000 views a month, this, that, and the other. That's all well and good. And it's like, yeah, but it took me years to get to that. It wasn't a upload a video overnight, boom, here I am. It takes a long time and a lot of work. And I think you need to go into, certainly like something like boxing, if you're doing boxing YouTube, you need to go in with your eyes wide open. And you need to know that, listen, this is most likely not going to be an overnight boom sensation. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a little bit of luck. And what I mean by work is that if it depends what you're looking to do. If you're looking to do something like what proper boxing does, you need to definitely have the voice for it, which he does. He's a great voice for speaking. You're engaged. The editing is on par as well, which is also very, very good. You need to have the good editing. You need to sound like you're not reading off a script, which is a big thing. If you're listening to someone and it's clear that they're reading off a script. I don't do many documentary style videos, but when I do, more often than not, I have scripted some of them, but more often than not, I'll actually have a script that I've written, and sometimes I'll deviate from it because how would I explain it? I'm reading what I wrote, but I'm talking at the same time, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of, even though I have a script there, I'm improvising some of it, so you can really tell I'm not reading off a script. You kind of don't want to sound like that. If you're doing what I do, and I do a bit of everything really, I do interviews, I do documentaries, I do everything. If you're doing news and you're doing reviews, in boxing, you have a finite window to hit in with peak views. Unless you're Ade or unless you're Hatman, who have, 50k plus, Hatman nearly 100k, you could probably get away with talking about the latest news days later and still pull in insane views. But if you're just starting out, you may as well not do anything at all if you're going to wait days to cover a news story, So if Tyson Fury announces tomorrow he's going to come back and he's going to fight Otto Wallin in a rematch, hypothetically speaking, right? You need to be on it like a car bonnet. You need to have videos, boom, like what I do, boom, done. I could probably get away with leaving that a bit, but I've just, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've just always known, just do it as quick. So I'm kind of in that mindset now of just get in and get it out. But I could probably get away with doing it a bit later, to be honest with you. But if you're starting out, you need to hit in with that like that. You need to be on it, because that's how you're going to stand out. That's how you're going to get your name out there. Oh, I'm seeing a video recommendation. Oh, Tyson Fury. Who's this? It's Thomas's channel's name, whatever you want to call it. Okay, now I'm listening. And when you're starting out, I would always recommend videos no longer than 7 minutes, 6 to 7 minutes. If you're a small channel, in the nicest way, people tend to, if you see a really long video from a channel with say 100 subscribers, more often than not, people are going to be like, oh, the hell with that, I'm not going to listen to that. If it's like, say 15 minutes long. If it's a short little snippet, you'll listen to it, you'll be like, right, I want more of that. And then you'll notice when I started out, all my videos were short, reasonably short. Now they're not. Now I can do a long video, like this will be a long video, and it doesn't really matter. I can see the total listen time, and it's pretty good. So you gotta just advice like that. Just know that it's not going to be a sprint. It's going to be a marathon if you do this. In terms of equipment, I use an iPhone, a stand. I have a JBL mic, which I use for live streaming, which I'm probably going to... I am figuring out how to get it hooked up onto this. Once I can do that, I'm laughing. I can improve the mic quality. Because it is a good mic, I'm not going to lie. It was £90 on... Did I get it on Amazon? I think I got it on Amazon. So I recommend that. This one right here is just a buy-out mic. It's just a good vlogging mic. It does the job. I was also thinking of getting the POV mic, the POV, and even just walking around London, doing a video like that, mic plugged in, stuff. Little ideas like that, but that's just for me. So that's the response there. Tyson Fury beat Usyk both times. That's a fact, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Okay, you keep doing that. G-Man, are you excited for GTA 6? I'm worried the game will be woke. Yeah, there is a little bit of trepidation with GTA 6, I'm not going to lie. My favourite GTA is GTA 4. And that was the most real GTA. Like, it had humour in it, but it had a great story. It had a great protagonist, the Nico Bellic. The DLC was much, much better than GTA 5's DLC because they gave you games and they kind of gave you other things to do. GTA 4 was my favourite. For me, that was the best. That was the best GTA they ever did. GTA 5, I played the hell out of GTA 5. Look, I love GTA 5, not as much as GTA 4. And I'm worried GTA 6, they're gonna... Yeah, I am worried. I'm not gonna lie, I'm worried about GTA 6. Having said that, next year, Mafia The Old Country is going to be released, and that's by Hangar 13. And they are the antithesis of woke when it comes to video games. So, and the Mafias, apart from Mafia 3, which was terrible, it really was, it wasn't a great game. Mafia 1, which I never played the original, I played the remade version, not the remaster. They did a complete remake of it in 2020. I played that and I really enjoyed it. And Mafia 2 is one of probably my favorite story I've ever played in any game. But there was you see, Mafia 2, they did a great job on that game. They really did, but they didn't do enough for an open world. I mean, there's literally nothing to do outside of there's literally nothing to do in that game outside of the missions. That's where they messed up with that. And I think as well as that, they messed up with Mafia 3 in a sense of they literally left Mafia 2 on a cliffhanger. Not really a cliffhanger, but they left it on such a note where you're wanting to know what happens next. They could have brought you to a new city, kept the same protagonist, and they didn't. And I think they were onto a winner with that, and they didn't pull the trigger with it, so to speak. So GTA 6, I bought GTA 5 when it came out on the day. In 2013. I don't think I'll be doing that with GTA 6. I don't think I'll be doing it with GTA 6. I will buy it eventually, but yeah. My question is regarding the all-time... Hang on a minute. Did I miss some of these chats? I did. I was thinking there because I'm going to read this other one here because there was a chat there about a southpaw and I knew I had replies on it. And I was like, where'd that reply comment go? How do you be a southpaw with better footwork and speed who consistently keeps hopping left to right of your lead foot, making your right hand virtually ineffective jab? The jab could work, but I would actually probably try and get the left hook working, get the left hook going from head to body. The jab is effective. It's an effective punch against anybody. I know with a southpaw, it's not ideal. It has to travel a little bit further. But if you even doubling up on a jab will be a very effective punch against the southpaw. If he's moving like that and essentially the left hook to the body, that will take the legs right out of them. Now, big up to Ben. My question is regarding all-time great status for Usyk. Usyk is being put down a lot by the British media as being good, but will be destroyed by basically any top heavyweight prior to 2000. My question is, given all other athletics have improved due to sports science, nutritionist, trainability, and basically learning from the past, best, how can we possibly say that Usyk would not be able to compete with men 30, 40, 60 years ago? And a follow-up question, are we guilty of seeing the past with in nostalgic rose-tinted goggles and therefore based against what could be an all-time great fighter? We don't do this with football, athletic events, weightlifting, but we do it with contact sports or combat sports, especially boxing. Well, the British media are very biased against Alexander Usyk, and we've seen it. Like, it doesn't matter what you say or do, they will just look at Usyk and say, oh, he's good, but how good are the guys he's fighting now? Oh, if he fought Lennox Lewis, like Simon Jordan said, Lennox Lewis will destroy Alexander Usyk. I doubt that. I've seen Lennox Lewis fight fighters who are short and fast, and yeah, he's won, but he's not without his troubles, and they were not as talented as Alexander Usyk. I mean, I seen Shannon Briggs give him fits. Shannon Briggs should have had a knockdown scored on Lennox Lewis in their fight in the first round. He hurt Lennox Lewis bad and Lewis fell into the ropes, and he literally was going down. The ropes kept up, and the referee didn't administer a count. If you go back and look at that fight. So I think Lennox Lewis, I probably would edge him over Usyk in a very competitive, tough fight for Lennox Lewis. Lewis was great at adapting as the fight was going on, but to act as though it's a slam dunk that they win. And yeah, you do look at the past with rose-tinted specs. You definitely do. I would be picking Usyk over a lot of the guys from the 90s and the 70s. I'd be picking Usyk over the likes of, Tommy Morrison. I would pick him over Evander Holyfield. He'd give Lennox Lewis a good fight. Mike Tyson. I'd give Alexander Usyk a great shot over Mike Tyson. You bring him into the 80s, that was quite a weak era to be fair, but like the Larry Holmes of the world, stuff like that, that'd be an epic fight. Muhammad Ali. So we do, but you are 100% right. We do tend to look at the past with rose-tinted specs. That people would say, oh, the 90s wasn't great at the time. And then they'll say, 20 years later, oh, the 90s was great, wasn't it? These guys can't be any good. And I guarantee you if Simon Jordan is on TalkSport, unlikely, but if he's on TalkSport 20 years from now, John Doe, who's the best heavyweight in the world, he'd never beaten Alexander Usyk. Guarantee it. G-Man, I know you were close with the Zone. Do you know why they use such bad presenters for certain shows? Ade is good, but the girl who did the Atom McKean face-off was poor. It seems the Zone think boxing fans want media names rather than talent. Yeah, my heart went out to that girl, Olivia. I forget her last name. It begins with a B. It's a weird pronunciation on it. My heart went out to that girl because that girl Olivia, I don't know her personally, but she is actually quite a talented presenter. In all fairness, she is. But she's quite talented when it comes to football and stuff like that. She doesn't properly know boxing, which is okay as long as you know the basics. But putting her in a position like that, listen, I've been there recordings for those face-offs. I mean, Ade actually, when he was doing the Edwards Bam face-off, we went to the Stratford Hotel for a drink just to go over questions and notes the Monday, and he was recording that on a Tuesday afternoon. So this was like last year, 2023. And that was hard. Like you could see, I was like, oh my God, like that does not look easy. And they're cutting bits of it out. It does not look easy, right? And that's Ade, who's experienced and he knows boxing. So when you take someone who doesn't really know it and you put them in that position, now on the flip side, you would say, okay, but it's up to the person doing the show, if she's in that position, to really do her homework. Yeah, true, fair enough. And I don't necessarily think that was 100% done for that show. But, it's a tough one. Like, I'm not in the zones, I'm not in the upper echelon of the zone. I don't know what way it is. I know Ade said he was busy that day, so he couldn't do it. But, yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of that. What I will say is that girl, Olivia, she is talented. She is good at presenting. She is good at interviewing. So, look, maybe lessons learned, on both sides. Maybe too much too soon. And make sure, for the love of God, if you're in a position similar, you have your homework absolutely done. Because it's like in any form of life. You ever hear people say in boxing, talent will only get you so far. That girl is talented. But that'll only get you so far. If you don't do the necessary homework beforehand, it counts for nothing. It's like that in any form of life. You could be the best accountant in the world, but if someone gives you something you don't know what you're doing, you're like, oh crap, I know I'm so good at this, I'm so good with crunching numbers, but this one here, I don't know what to do. Well, they gave you all the info beforehand. Did you look at it? There you go. So I think it was an element of that there. When you hear of a rumour or some unconfirmed info, how do you evaluate the likelihood of it being true? Well, that's a very good question, because I do see a lot of rumours, and I obviously don't do videos on them all. It depends on the source it's coming from and the sources I see reporting it. I seen when Dylan White was rumoured to be fighting in Gibraltar. You remember I didn't break the news. I may have broke the news on YouTube. Someone might have been before me, I don't know. But I seen that on X, as it's known now. I was going to call it Twitter there. I think it was a Charlie Parsons who broke it, and he heard it from someone else. Now, someone like Charlie Parsons who would be quite in the know, I would take that, and the fact he's tweeting about it, I would take that to say, okay, maybe. There's other forums and other like people on Twitter where I'd see it and I'd be like, I'm not even gonna entertain that, because I've seen them say this, that, and the other, and it's been not even remotely close. So you need to see where it's coming from and the people who are talking about it. There are certain, accounts on Twitter that if you see them even kind of hitting at something like that, you're like, all right, it might only be a rumor, but it's worth looking into because of the people who are speaking about it. When you see other people, it's just like, all right, I'm not even going to look into that. It's just pointless. So as soon as I saw Parsons was talking about it and he'd heard it from contacts as well, I was like, yeah, I could well believe that. And as well as that, you need to... I remember when, again, Dylan White, I remember when I was here, I can't remember who actually told me originally that he was meant to be fighting on the Castle Bar show before he was announced. Blimey, who was it? I can't remember, but I was told, it was DM'd by someone, and they were like, oh, I think Dylan White's going to be fighting, the rumour is, on this Castle Bar show. And I was like, do you know what, I could see that, because Thomas Carty is one of his fighters, is on that show. Ireland, they don't give a damn about where you're from. If you're a big name, they'll have you. So I was like, yeah, I could easily see that. I could easily see that being verified, and it subsequently turned out to be true. So you do need to take them with a grain of salt. You always need to. You just need to see as well, like, who are the ones talking about it as well, and how is their reputation, so to speak. Well done on the growth in 2024, G-Man. Thank you so much for the content. Appreciate that, mate. Thank you. My question is, aside from the fact we get better fights as a result now, do you miss the promoters beef we used to get? I do. I'm not going to lie, I do. I think it made for fun content as a side show, and was part of what made boxing different from other sports. Now they are careful what they say about the other fighters. Understandably, their interviews are much more duller as a result. I do miss that. I used to love Frank Warren would give an interview, knocking Eddie Hearn, and then Eddie Hearn will follow up. You can't not miss that. It was funny. It was something different that you didn't see in other sports. It was just, it was different, and I do miss that. I do, because now it's everyone's friends, and you do. I mean, Frank Warren, could you imagine, oh man, holy crap, could you imagine, right, if Eddie Hearn and Warren weren't working so closely together now, and say Turkey was with Frank, but some other Saudis were with Eddie, and they were all working together, but Eddie had his kind of end and Frank had his. Could you imagine, just imagine the Frank Warren interview going in on Eddie Hearn if, the Matchroom Queensbury, if they hadn't have been close during that? Could you imagine? He would have, Eddie Hearn would have retired then and there. He would have absolutely, that would have been something else. I do kind of miss it, I do. Craig asks, what do you think of Conor Benn walking into a world title shot after a 2-year ban, and Jack Catterall has to fight an eliminator after being robbed of Undisputed and then beating everyone who's in front of him? Completely wrong. Listen, Conor Benn, I worry that Conor Benn has set a precedent now for drug cheats, because whatever you want to say about it, right? And I know people want to say, well, he's been proven innocent. And there's people now saying that because he's been cleared, it means he never failed a test. No, mate. He failed 2 tests. There's no ifs or buts. That happened, right? The fact of the matter is that he did everything in his power to circumvent due process and was able to get 2 fights out of it. By the time it all came to, it came all to a boil, the British Boxing Board were like, it's been 2 years, to hell with it, do what you want. That sets a bad precedent. Dylan White is doing it as well. He failed the drugs test, or an adverse finding, nearly 2 years ago. And he's had 2 fights in between, none of them in the UK. He'll probably be okay to fight next year in the UK, because they'll be like, look, it's been 2 years, draw a line in the sand. That sets a bad precedent. If fighters now are going to fail a test and think, do you know what? All I need to do is go to this state, in America, or go to this country in Europe, or go to Ireland, it's all good. I can have a big fight. I can fight in the Tree Arena. The Irish, the Boxing Union of Ireland is what it's called. It's going to be called the board, but it's the Boxing Union. They don't give a damn. Then that's what I'll do. It's setting a bad precedent, I think. I really do. And in terms of him getting a world title shot, again, I mean, like, he's not fought at welterweight in 3 years. 2 fights at 154 pounds. I think they were both 10 rounders, weren't they? And 10 or 12. One was a 12 rounder, actually. One was a 10 rounder. And yeah, straight into a world title shot. And Jack Catterall should have got the win over Josh Taylor the first time. Has fought Linares, over the hill Linares, fair enough. Nevertheless, still fought him. Beat Josh Taylor, wrote the wrong the second time. Much better fight, much more competitive fight, but yep, wrote the wrong. And now is fighting Barbosis. Oh, and fought Regis Prograis too. What more does the man need to do? You know? What is the food in London like? I'm not gonna lie, it's not the strongest thing in London, the food scene. You know, I tend to just stick to Waitrose chicken and rice, Uncle Ben's rice. I much prefer the food in Ireland, in Dublin, to be honest with you. So when I come home here, I tend to be a bit happier with like what I'm eating. Yeah, the food scene in London is not its strongest. It's definitely not. There are a few places where you can get some nice meals, but yeah, they're few and far between, in my opinion. Maybe I've not been looking in the right places. What do you think happens when the Saudis get bored with funding boxing? I don't think that'll be anytime soon. But if that bubble bursts, I don't know. It's going to be harder to make big fights because they'll be used to getting paid big money. Games with JH. He says, hope you had a good Christmas and New Year's, G-Man. I did. I had a great Christmas. My question is, do you think Fury versus Ngannou fight hindered Fury in the first Usyk fight? And a follow-up to that is, do you think Fury would have had a better chance against Usyk if he'd fought him sooner? I'm sure the Ngannou fight would have dented his confidence. Seeing AJ sparked Ngannou with ease wouldn't have helped either. Keep up the great work you're doing. Well, see, he didn't take much of a beating in the Ngannou fight, to be fair. And I thought Fury legitimately won it. He didn't take too much of a beating. He was dropped, but it was more balanced, in my opinion, than anything else. Do I think his confidence took a dent? I'm sure it didn't. It probably did, but it probably didn't take as much of a dent until he seen AJ knock out Ngannou. Because you could see it in his face. He was like, crap, what the hell did I do there? Or what the hell did he do there? And why couldn't I do that? Because you could see it in his face after. In terms of Fury, if he'd fought Usyk earlier, the problem is there, right? If he'd fought Usyk earlier, he would have got a much better Usyk. So you would have got a much better Fury, but you would have got a much better Usyk. So therefore, it's still a level playing field. I think that Alexander Usyk, looking at those two fights, would always give Tyson Fury fits, no matter what Tyson Fury he got. I used to think the best version of Fury would be Usyk. Now I'm not so sure. So do I think the Ngannou fight, listen, it might have made Fury question himself a little bit, but I don't think it played that much of a factor, in my opinion. I don't think it did. Final part. My leg was the way I was sitting. I was like, no, I need to take a walk. So we'll finish off these questions now. Have you seen the series From? I don't really watch a lot of TV, like series anymore, really. Like in London, I don't even own a TV. So, I'm not really a TV watcher. I haven't been for years now, to be honest with you. You make quality content. I need to commend you on that. You just don't make content just to increase your views. Well, thank you for that. I think. My question is this: what training did Triple D do, to increase his punch resistance? From being dropped by Lorena, stopped by Usyk's jab, to eating Hrgovic's right hands with no ill effect, I think it's Brazilian steak myself. Well, I wouldn't rule anything out, to be honest with you, man. I really wouldn't. But what I would say about Dubois, yeah, he was stopped by a jab from Usyk, but realistically, like, he capitulated mentally, not physically. I don't think he was necessarily hurt. I think that just mentally he checked out. I think with Lorena, he probably was hurt, at least with the first knockdown. But the other two, in my opinion, they just looked that just looked like someone who didn't know what was going on. In a sense of, he just was like, what do I do? I'm panicking. So I think back then, certainly with Dubois, I wouldn't call him chinny back then and say he's fixed it. I think that maybe he's just a bit more mentally switched on. Well, I say mentally switched on. I don't think Dubois will ever be that, but I think maybe he's just a bit more confident in himself in the corner, and maybe since you know, meeting a certain someone and, you know, doing certain things, it's, you know, it's given him a different outlook on things. It's made him a bit more confident. So that's what I'd say on that one. G-Man, love your channel. What are your plans for 2025 channel wise? You know, it's not like this year I wanted to hit 20k, which I did. I would love to hit 30k next year, which some would say maybe that's a bit of a unrealistic target. Maybe 25 would be a bit more, but I've been doing 5k subs plus for the last 2 years, so maybe we can try and increase it this year. And I am looking to do more. Look, I'm obviously, one of the reasons why I moved to London was to get to more events, and I couldn't get to many last year for the simple reason is that I used a lot of my time off either going to a couple of events during the course of the year or getting the move planned. And this year, obviously, it's reset. I have a rough idea because I was talking to, you know, my guy in the zone today. Well, not talking, we were texting. So I have a rough idea when the Feb 22nd press conference is going to be. I'm not going to tell anybody, obviously, but I have a rough idea when that's going to be. So I'll be able to attend that, hopefully get some interviews at that. And then it's just going to be a case of just pushing on. Any shows in London that I can get to, I will try to. Maybe not ones in Wembley because it depends. Wembley to Stratford is, like, that's far away. It's, you're gonna have to train that, and it's not a quick train ride. It's Stratford is the start of the Jubilee line, and I think Wembley Park, which is Wembley Stadium, that is, I think, the either second or third last stop. It's an hour. I've done it before. It's not fun. It's not fun. So that one I might look against, but I'd love to do and see shows in other parts of the country, like Birmingham. I know no one's ever going to say, I can't wait to go Birmingham. But yeah, it's not that far away, so I'd maybe go to some of those shows. Hopefully I can go to the one in Belfast, the Matchroom show. Hopefully can do that one. And then just you know, see other parts of the UK while I'm there, because what's the point in just spending all your time in London and going to shows there? I'm looking to just branch out and do a few more of them. But saying that, at the same time, I've noticed that boxing interviewing in general has kind of, it's not what it used to be. So look, we'll wait and see. You know, me and Ade, we only talked very recently there about doing some regular work together, and hopefully we can do that. That's what we've been talking about for a while. It's just been really bad timing for both of us. Either he's something or I've something, and that has just been the biggest pain. Just getting a time where we can both sit down and kind of go over things, which hopefully we will have time to do early next year. We see how things go. That's really what the plan is, you know, and just to improve everything, you know, that's really what I want to do now. I've got myself in a good position over there, certainly for the next year, and just see how we go. Just really kind of make 2025 a better year, but just see kind of how we go with that. Do you think promoters have a net positive or net negative for the state of boxing? They add a lot of drama and storylines to the fight and help fast track amazing prospects, but in my opinion are large responsible for big fights such as Fury Joshua not happening at the right time and are known to kick boxers when they're down, i.e. Joe Cordina. And do you think Uncle Turkey solved this problem? Love your content, mate, and looking forward to seeing the growth of the channel in 2025. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just Joe Cordina, you know. Eddie Hearn, I've heard with Scott Quigg. As well, say he's a harder guy to get in contact with, when you take an L or something. And the way Joe Cordina was treated, I don't think that's right at all. Frank Warren, though, I mean, the same could be said for him. Frank Warren would be more. See, Frank Warren, it'd be more so if you even before you've lost. Like, you look at someone like Lawrence Okolie. I said this before, I'll say it again. Eddie Hearn was very patient with him. If Frank Warren had been promoting Lawrence Okolie and he'd stunk the place out twice in the space of a year, Frank Warren would have fed him to the wolves. So Eddie Hearn didn't in that regard, but we are seeing him more. Yeah, we're seeing a different side to Eddie Hearn over the last couple of years, definitely. And listen, promoters have egos, and I think Turkey, him coming in, has solved that issue largely. He's been able to bring these promoters together purely because, they're seeing the figures and they're like, we'll work together. Prior to that, it was like that. If Frank Warren was keen on a fight, maybe Eddie Hearn wouldn't be, and then vice versa. It was really the only time you really ever saw a kind of a Queensberry fighter go over to Matchroom and fight on a Matchroom show or vice versa would be if you kind of got the impression that Hearn or Warren didn't see too much in the respective fighter and they were like, we'll sacrifice him. He can go off. If he wins, happy days. If he doesn't, he was never going to do much anyway. Whereas now, you're seeing match 5v5, you're seeing a difference. So promoters, in one sense, they can have a bad impact in a sense of not getting fights made. You're correct. You're absolutely spot on. But then they're the ones. If you've got a fighter who's quite a quiet, reserved character, having a Frank Warren, having an Eddie Hearn backing them makes all the difference. I mean, like, Frank Warren really did help Daniel Dubois because Frank Warren, when Daniel Dubois came around first, I remember him getting quite hyped. Even online, people were talking about him. It wasn't because Daniel Dubois had the charisma to blow everyone away. He was just performing well. He was getting good knockouts, and he had Frank Warren bigging him up every day of the week. So that helped. If you didn't have Frank Warren doing that, if you had just nobody and it was Dubois knocking guys out, he'd get some noise. But I don't think he would have made the noise early on that he did. Is the true moral of the Tyson Fury story the following? If he chased greatness instead of money, he would have fought AJ for undisputed years earlier and could have won. Ultimately, his own greed is what cost him an all-time great resume, and Usyk's pure ambition to fight the best is what made him the best of this era. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you say it there, to be honest with you. If Fury had chased undisputed, if he'd done that, which he could have done, and I think he would have beaten Anthony Joshua, to be honest with you. I really do. I think he would have beaten Anthony Joshua. He could have been undisputed. He could have had that resume. And even with losses, let's say he'd fought Anthony Joshua after Wilder and say he'd fought another contender here or there and he'd beaten them and maybe then lost to Alexander Usyk, he would still have that great resume. It wouldn't matter. Like, even if Alexander Usyk loses his next fight, I don't think anyone would be saying, Alexander Usyk was never that good. They'd be always saying he was that good, right? A loss isn't the be-all and end-all, but chasing that glory, you will earn the respect of so many. Even you look at Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua is not the best of this era, right? He's probably top 3, yeah, definitely top 3, but he's not the best of this era by any stretch. But you can't not respect the fact that he tried to be. He tried to go and make undisputed. He tried to unify. He tried to fight his contemporaries. He just wasn't good enough to beat them all. There's no shame in that. But with Tyson Fury, it was literally never even that. It was just make as much money, milk that title. And when it came down to it, when he did go and take the L, as I've said, you deserve the criticism. If you're going to try and claim you're the best, and you're going to try and claim all these things you won, you're the best of this era, well, boy, you are going to be critiqued like someone who is. You're going to get that level of criticism. And yeah, I think Fury could have done great things. And it's a real what if. It's a real what if would be if Tyson Fury never had those 3 years out of the ring. What could he have gone on to achieve? Because I think he probably would have beaten Klitschko in the rematch. And, from then, Klitschko fought Joshua a year later. Who's to say Fury couldn't have fought Joshua in 2017? And God knows where that would have led. Is Tank Davis one of the most wasted potential fighters of this generation in terms of skills and big fights he could have had and won instead of cherry picking opponents? Honestly, yeah, I genuinely do think that. I think that Tank Davis, I've always said it and I've rated him very highly for many, many years. I think that he has talent to burn. It's insane how much talent he has that he wastes by cherry picking. When he does fight a name like Ryan Garcia, he's got so much in his favor in terms of weight, catch weight, rehydration. You're just like, mate, you don't need that to win this fight. Why? Because all you're doing is tainting the win. You know, it's like playing a video game against someone and you are using cheat codes and he isn't, and then you win. Obviously, well, you didn't win it. Quote unquote, you did win it fairly, but you had a massive advantage. You know, so yeah, Tank Davis. It's a shame because I think he is fantastic, and it's just a shame. It really is. What do you feel is the ideal number of times a professional boxer from beginner to champion should be fighting a year? Which boxer at the Paris Olympics impressed you the most and have you the most confidence in becoming a star in the professional ranks? Well, I think when you're starting out, it's vital to be active. It's absolutely vital. Like, I would argue, if you can, it's not really feasible these days, but if I was a young prospect starting out, I would love 10 fights my first 2 years. Seriously, I'd love like 10 fights my first 2 years. As in 10 fights each year. So 10 fights 1 year and 10 fights the next. And then maybe bring it down a little bit as you go on. And once you're at, it depends on what level you're at world level. Because let's say you win a world title over look at Deontay Wilder, right? Let's say you beat a Bermain Stavern type fighter, you're a world champion. At that point, I think you should be having at least 3-4 title defenses that year. And then you want to step it up, you bring it down maybe to twice, 3 times a year. But I would say start out at 10 and then bring it slowly down year upon year as you go up the levels. Because if you're fighting at world level, I mean, I'm telling you now, you could probably only get away with maybe having about 3 or 4 fights in a year before you start to get serious wear and tear. Because you could, if you think about it like this, you have someone like Mike Tyson in his first year, crazy amount of fights. He probably wasn't doing serious training camps because you're fighting so frequently. You often hear like darts players say it when they're on tour so much. They don't need to practice as much because they're playing so many games. That's keeping them sharp. And you probably have the same with some of these fighters who are fighting so frequently. If you're fighting really, really frequently, and you don't probably need to do as impactful a training camp because you're ring ready. You're going 1 month, you're going the next. G-Man, long time viewer, great work this year. You might not like this question. Ade, he has changed. You can't deny it. He's more and more about money and fame than he was when he was up and coming. I hope if and when this becomes your job, you stay true. Well, I don't feel that, though. I don't feel that Ade has necessarily changed. I know, at least with me, I can talk to him. It's the same as it was 5 years ago when we first met. That's at least how I feel. I know because with his videos, there's only so much he can say. Because, I know that I've dealings with the zone, and I do be a little bit, I still say what I feel, but I do often sometimes think, you said that, how's that going to go? I can imagine that is 20 times for him, because he is on there every other week. So, but I don't think he's changed, to be honest with you, mate. Certainly not from what I've seen. His videos, same as always. To me, anyway, he's the same as he's always been. G-Man, good or bad fighters coming off losses getting title shots? It's pretty new in boxing. G-Man, good or bad fighters coming off losses getting title shots? It's pretty new in boxing. Bad, not good, don't like it. In terms of heavyweight championship fights following Parker Dubois, which matches would you make if you're Turkey? Well, if Usyk sticks around, he'll likely face the winner for Undisputed again, you would imagine. If he doesn't, and those belts get fragmented, I would love to see the winner of Dubois versus Parker. I think it'll be Dubois versus Martin Bakole. I'd love to see that fight. I would love to see Moses Atelma in there trying to break Mike Tyson's record he has till May. So there's some of the fights I'd love. But I would love to see Bacoli versus Dubois. I think that would be epic. What's been your fight of the year? And what was your most disappointing fight of the year? For me, my fight of the year was Wardley versus Clark 1, and most disappointing fight was Boots Ennis' last fight. Well, I thought that my fight of the year would really be between two fights, and it is. It's Clark Wardley 1, which was epic, and Usyk Fury 1. Probably because of the implications, I would go with Fury versus Usyk 1. That fight was mega. Biggest disappointment of the year? It's a good question, actually. Biggest disappointment. See, I knew Boots versus Karen, we'll just call him. I knew that wasn't going to be great, just because the first fight wasn't great. It was better than the first fight, but I knew it wasn't going to be mega. Biggest disappointment of the year? That's an interesting question. I'm just trying to think what the biggest disappointment was this year, really. I can't think of... Was there any fights that I thought would have really caught fire and turned out to be duds? Struggled a little bit with this one. I'm not going to lie, man. Biggest disappointment? I guess the biggest disappointment was probably Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Just the whole event as a whole was just... ugh. That's probably the biggest disappointment of the year. Is there any boxer who you championed even though you knew they were never going to go far? You kind of lost me on that one. Is there any boxer who you championed even though you knew they were not going to go far? Well, it depends on what you mean. Was there a fighter who I thought could go far and didn't? Oh, God. I mean, I'm sure there have been. I'm sure there have been loads. I'm trying to think of one that I thought would have done something and didn't. But there have been fighters who I've liked as people, but I kind of knew where their level was. But, I'd always like to see them do well, even though I don't think they're necessarily going to go far. I guess Gary Cully, I thought, at one point would go further than he has. I think he's pretty much found his ceiling now. And, yeah, look, he's kind of, what would you call him, domestic level, European level. I thought he might go and push on a little bit further than that, but he clearly hasn't. Who else? Probably is, but just thinking off the top of my head, I can't really think of many. Now, here we go. It's a good question, actually. Hey, G-Man, a boxing fan from Ukraine. Shout out to you. My question's about the Klitschko brothers. Back home in Ukraine, they are a national pride and considered some of the greatest boxers of all time. However, I heard numerous times you and Hatman mention the period of their reign, the dark times for the heavyweight division, that Tyson Fury saved the division when he beat Vladimir Klitschko. I started watching boxing only after the Klitschko era and was wondering if you could explain why you think it was dark times and Fury was the savior. Thank you for the amazing content. I'll even love that comment. That was brilliant. A great comment. So it's hard to really explain to someone who wasn't around at the time now it wasn't all the Klitschko's fault. That has to be said. All right, it wasn't all their fault. When Lennox Lewis retired, you essentially had Corey Sanders versus Vitaly Klitschko was the last really good heavyweight fight for a long time, and really competitive one too. Even though Klitschko clearly won it, but Sanders was competitive in that fight. You're essentially looking at a heavyweight division that was... The Americans were still... So the Americans, in terms of the heavyweight boxing, they were... In the 90s, they were the main guys. And then they sort of didn't become that. But there was no one else to really fill the void. And you had the Klitschkos who were significantly better than everybody. You still had a lot of people pushing the American prospects. Chris Bird was an American champion, and he wasn't a terrible fighter, but he was nowhere near on the level of the Klitschkos. Even when he fought Vitaly, he wasn't winning that fight. He won maybe 2 rounds before Vitaly quit with a shoulder injury, and he got beat both times by Vladimir. You had Tony Thompson, who was one of the better prospects at the time, which is, Thompson wasn't anything great. You had Chris Arreola, again, a short, fat heavyweight. You had Jameel McCline, who was awful. I think he was a sparring partner for Lennox Lewis. These were some of the better American kind of contenders you had. And then you look to the UK, you had the likes of, say, like Danny Williams was a contender at one point. I know now, he's crazy that he's still fighting. Shannon Briggs even picked up a title. That was 10 years, I think, after he fought Foreman, you know. And then you look at some of the contenders that were in, like, from Europe. You had, like, Valoev, you know. Tony Bellew called him Lurch, because if you ever see the movie Hot Fuzz, the trolley boy in the local supermarket was a big, tall, massive guy who, in the movie, he had a child's mind, and that's who we called Nikolai Valoev. You had Suleiman Ibragimov, you had Sergei Lakovic, you had Rustin Shagayev, a fat cruiserweight in Shagayev. You had really poor fighters who were in the top 10 of heavyweights in the mid-2000s who wouldn't have even graced the top 20 probably in the 90s. They'd be absolutely blown out of the water today, you know? I mean, today's heavyweights, some of those guys, Ibragimov, Shagayev, they would be cannon fodder to the likes of, you know, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk today, Deontay Wilder, you know, seriously. And these were the guys Klitschko were facing. Then it became apparent that, like, the heavyweights were not good, so you looked at some of the cruiserweights. You looked at David Haye, Jean-Marc Mormec ended up fighting Klitschko. That was a horrible fight. And it was awful. And you had a lot of heavyweights who were poor, short, and fat. And you had the both Klitschkos who were just the absolute perfect athletes. You knew there was no chance of them being in a competitive fight or losing. And saying that, even though you knew that, Vladimir in particular, not so much Vitaly. Vitaly was always more the man. Vladimir would still look for these silly little unfair advantages. He'd hold all the flipping time. When he fought Ibragimov in New York, he didn't fight in New York for another, 8 years? HBO were pretty much done with boxing at that point, heavyweight boxing. It was awful. It really was that bad. It's not all the Klitschko's fault, does have to be said, but it was awful. It really, really was. The heavyweight division back then, it was a really weak era. It was really poor, and it seemed like, you know, nothing was going to change. And then you had, you know, David Haye came into it, although he came short against Klitschko. The likes of Povetkin, Wilder started making some noise in America. You had Tyson Fury, you had David Price, and Anthony Joshua came along. And when these new guys came along, you actually saw talent. You saw talent in Tyson Fury. You saw David Price, although he was vulnerable, he could punch. Same with Deontay Wilder. David Haye had speed, he had charisma. They didn't really have charisma, those heavyweights, either. So you did get the impression that, you know, the winds of change were coming. And when Tyson Fury beat Klitschko, he ushered in this new era, which sadly is coming to an end now. But I think we have a great era to follow, which we didn't from Lennox Lewis going into the Klitschko era. And again, it's not 100% the Klitschko's fault, but they had the contracts that they made fighters sign, the rematch clause, they had to fight Vitaly, or it was awful. It really was. Hey G-Man, my question is, how do you manage your time creating content while doing other things in your life? And what is your strategy to switch off? Yeah, I don't... See, I'm quite lucky. When I'm in work in Ireland, I drive into the office and I go gym and I go home. Simple as. And I live on my own here, so it's fine for me. And I don't really play games much these days. I go out and see my friends a lot, but I tend to do that more on the weekend. So during the week, I'm kind of good to go. And when I'm in London, for me, it's kind of more just, it's kind of almost a way of life now, really. Just go home and record, look for news, record, go to the gym. So I guess time management for me is quite okay. It could change next year, you know. You'll often notice with me, if I'm ever like dating anybody, I do tend to, I don't want to say the workload drops, but maybe I'm not as quick to get things done. But you know, I've always been quite good at doing the time management. I guess, look, this YouTube channel means the world to me, so I'm always very careful about managing it. Top 10 British fighters of all time, mate. Jeez, man, there is so many. I don't want to be bad, but I don't even think I could even name top 10 British fighters of all time. There's that flipping many of them. What else do we have here? Do you think boxers and their in what do you say that? In Torgar are too sensitive? I'm assuming you mean fans. Many boxers take issue if you pick against them, or they get a gift decision, i.e. Fury, and having tough questions or critiques. Or recently, Johnny Fisher's dad with Gareth A. Davis. As much as I like footballers, as much as I think footballers are not tough on the pitch, they seem to have thicker skin. Yeah, you would. It's really weird. It's really weird. Look, boxers have big egos, and I guess they don't want. I guess they see. I guess with football, it's more a team sport. So you could say, "Oh, I don't think Man United will beat Liverpool," which unfortunately I don't. That's not a reflection on, you say, Garnacho or someone like that. But if you say, I think Usyk beats Fury, well, Fury would be like, well, that's a bad reflection on me. Well, you got a problem with me. So I can kind of see it to an extent, because football is a team sport, so they're not really going to have as much of a go. They'll just think like, oh, I'm doing fine, someone like Garnacho or someone like that, Bruno Fernandes, as opposed to, someone saying, oh, I picked this guy. Why? Am I not good enough? So I do kind of get that. What's your left field prediction for boxing in 2025? Oh. It's not really left field, but I think we probably will get Canelo Crawford. Big up G-Man. Who's your favourite F1 fighter on the grid? Max Verstappen. Followed by Fernando Alonso and Oscar Piastri. Where do you place Alexander Usyk in all-time greats, and who wins Joshua Fury? Alexander Usyk is definitely top 5, maybe top 3. In fact, probably top 3. Certainly heavyweights. And Fury beats Joshua right now, I believe. If Usyk did this, would he be the best boxer to ever live? Beat Dubois in the rematch, then Wilder. Who is that? You mean Zhang? I'm assuming Shang means Zhang and Bakoli. Man, if he did that, man, if he doesn't have the time to beat all these guys, but if he did that, man, if he did that, then that's just, he doesn't have the time for one. He'd be well in his 40s by the time he did all that. But if he beat all the guys you're mentioning there, yeah, man, you've got to be, that's serious. I don't think he's the time. If he even did Dubois, Wilder and Bakoli, then I think that's enough to boost him significantly up. Happy New Year from New Zealand. 2 questions. What's your favourite Netflix show as of 2024? The Last Kingdom. Were you surprised how AJ performed against Dubois? No head movement, no lateral movement, and gloves consistently way too low. It was like Dubois couldn't miss if he got tired. After spending 24 rounds with Usyk and then starting to look good, he was so far off that night. Do you think a rematch will go differently? And also, who was your favourite heavyweight? Who was your favourite heavyweight as of 2024? Love the content. Thank you, G-Man. Happy New Year and peace. Yeah, I was very surprised how bad Joshua looked. I don't think he'd win. I think he'd get knocked out even earlier in the rematch. Favourite heavyweight of all time? Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. G-Man, serious question. Would you rather fight one elephant-sized duck or 100 duck-sized elephants? It's a real serious question, man. I think I'll take the 100 duck-sized elephants. You can just kick them away. How the hell are you going to touch a big, flipping huge duck? Which fight are you looking forward to in 2025? There hasn't been many announced, but I would say I'm always looking forward to Naomi Inoue. Bivol Beterbiev too, as of right now. Which fights do you look for? I already read that one. With all the boxing channels out there on YouTube, what are some of your favourites? Oh man, there is loads I listen to. Hatman, Ade, Dell, Joe Stunner, Outmatch, Boxing on the Edge, Henry, a guy called Henry as well. There's a lot of Henrys in boxing. I love a guy called Henry as well. He's a really, really cool guy. He's a really good guy as well. I love his content. Yikes. Punch Perfect Boxing when he uploads. Big up to Jamie. Interviewing channels. Boxing King Media. Man, there's loads. If I haven't mentioned Ade, then I will mention him because obviously I do watch Ade as well. And I'm probably not even scratching the surface, man. I watch loads of boxing channels. I do, and I feel bad if I don't mention some. So just because I haven't mentioned you, that doesn't mean I don't watch you. G-Man, just wondering what you're planned to reach the next milestone. Been loving the content this year. Hopefully 30k next year, man. I'd love that. We'll wait and see. Hey, G-Man, what's your opinion on IFL? They used to be my go-to years ago, but now I go to Boxing King Media these days. Why are IFL views so low these days? Yeah, look, I don't really watch IFL that much these days. I would sooner watch BKM or Boxing News. I think it's kind of, well, boxing interviews in general have kind of gone downhill now. They're not what they were in terms of views and everything. So I think that's just the way the times are going with IFL. And as well as that, if you see a Frank Warren interview, if you see one, you see them all. So if Boxing King Media get the interview first, it's rinse and repeat. So there's no point watching an IFL or a Boxing News interview if you've seen one. If you haven't spoke about the Fisher fight at length, although I may have missed it, can you do a quick sum up? And I was a bit upset you didn't give Alan a chance. And where do you think both go from here? Thank you. Well, I didn't give Alan a chance, and you're absolutely right. And I was wrong. I mean, I thought he won the fight. I knew Johnny Fisher was not going to set the world alight. I knew he was never going to get to world level or anything like that. And I think he knows that himself. But I thought he'd have enough in the tank to beat Dave Allen. Boy, was I wrong. I mean, I was shocked how bad he looked. I thought Dave Allen clearly won the fight. And I owe him a big apology because the one time he put it all together, they go and they flip and rob him. G-Man, if a boxer was clearly winning the round and gets legitimately knocked down, but he beats the count in the last 20 seconds, how do you score the round? I would give it to the fighter who scored the knockdown, because basically that really does see him win the round, unless he was taking a massive Hail Mary beating, in which case you could maybe only give him a 10-9 round. But as far as I'm concerned, you drop the guy, you've won the round. Maybe 10-9, but you've won the round. Hey, man, big fan and long-time subscriber. Shout out to you, my man, to Danny Gallagher Boxing. You mentioned Hatman taking the Talmud to beat AJ, and I personally agree with him. What is your outcome of the fight? You cited age experience as a big factor. How does it end? Also, how long before we see a Talmud in a world title fight? Massive fan of the channel. Keep the great work, and hopefully he goes from strength to strength. Hopefully. I just think the experience of Joshua would see him I think he'd just be able... It's hard because I look at a Talmud and I can see how he can beat Joshua, but seeing how and doing it is two different things. I think the experience factor would be key for Anthony Joshua, but if he makes the same mistakes he made against Dubois, a Talmud has even quicker hands. Might not be as big a puncher, but he can flip and bang, and he's got quicker hands. So I really don't know how long before a Talmud could be in a world title fight. Pretty soon, man, judging by what I've seen there. It's quite likely that Usyk, Fury, Joshua, Wilder finish soon. These guys have been the names in the heavy division for the last decade. Who do you see upcoming for the immediate period that after they finish? Does Dubois clean out the division? No, I think it could be a variety. I mean, I think you've got Moses Telma, Dubois, Bakadir Jalalov, Coley. Parker is still going to stick around because he's still quite young by heavyweight standards anyway. So I kind of see it almost picking up from where the previous era left off. I don't see it being a dark age or one dominant champion. I see a lot of good talent there. An awful lot. Hey G, do you think Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren try to bully Ben Shalom? I don't think they necessarily try and bully him per se. I think that Ben Shalom riles them up quite bad and they bite, especially Frank Warren. How do you think a prime David Haye would get on against a prime Usyk at cruiserweight? I think he'd be very competitive. I think stylistically it'd be a very interesting fight, but I would still favour Alexander Usyk. Are you enjoying living in London? What are your goals professionally and personally for 2025? Lastly, when are we getting F1 with G-Man? I don't know if you're ever going to get F1 with G-Man. I just don't think I'd fit in very well in that genre. I mean, in the nicest way, it's, if you've ever watched any of the YouTube channels, I would say it's a lot of dweebs. Like, a lot of those guys are dweebs, they're betas, and, you know, I'm very old school when it comes to F1. I despise the Halo with a passion. I've listened to a lot, like that Will FP1 guy. I mean, he is a beta. That guy is a wimp, if ever I've heard one. I just wouldn't fit in. And if that's if the people who watch them, they'd watch me and they'd be just like, oh my God, like, that guy grazed his knee. Trust the halo. Yeah, I wouldn't fit in well with the F1 community, I don't think. Because I'd come with a boxing mindset of just, let them fight, let them race. And yeah, I don't think that would work well. I think it would have worked well if YouTube was around in the early 2000s. I'd fit in just fine, but not with today's crowd. Definitely not. And I am enjoying living in London. I'm not living there now. I'm back to London next week. I'm home for Christmas and New Year's. But I can't wait to get back. And I love it over there, man. I do love it. It's probably not going to be my home forever, but for now I'm enjoying it. Goals for the channel, get to more shows, increase the sub count, try and get to 30k. Professionally or personally, I always wanted to live. I don't live in southwest London. I live in Stratford in East London, and I always wanted to live in southwest London. So my kind of personal goal would be to get to southwest London at some point next year. Thanks for all the content this year. If you were in charge of making a Mount Rushmore for boxers, who will be on it and why? Instead of 4, you may choose 5. Maybe 1 for boxing as a whole, as in a fighter, and maybe another as a promoter and a trainer. Oh, wow. I couldn't do it, even though he was a great promoter, as in he put on great shows. Some would say Don King. I couldn't do it. He's a complete scumbag. You couldn't put him on Mount Rushmore. I don't know if I put a promoter on there, to be honest with you. Trainer, Manny Stewart, or Angie Dundee, even though I think Manny Stewart was better. One of those. Ali has to go there. He has to. You have to put Muhammad Ali. So put Muhammad Ali and Manny Stewart. I would put Alexander Usyk there now. I would. Joe Lewis, I would. Just because I know he didn't fight in a particularly strong division in the 1930s and 40s until Lesnar Charles came along and Jersey Joe. And because I love him, I would put Brendan Ingle there. I know some people would disagree with that, but I love Brendan Ingle. And he got the game. So that would be what I put on there. I couldn't put a promoter on there. I just couldn't do it. I'm the only one who you could say maybe Don King, but I couldn't do it. He's just a horrible, horrible human being. Awful. Happy New Year. Bam Inoue, a realistic fight? And if so, who do you think it could get made? And how do you think it would go? Inoue, in my opinion, definitely again. Where are we at? How many races into F1 2025 season are you going to give before Verstappen and Lawson fall out? I don't think there'll be a fallout. I wouldn't have put Liam Lawson in the car. I wouldn't have done it, personally. I would have put Tsunoda in there. Just me, I would have put Tsunoda in there. I think Liam Lawson's going to get absolutely annihilated by Verstappen. Great work this year, G-Man. Not to sound bad towards your mate Ade. I like his work as well, but lately he's been quite insufferable. The guy is just shilling for the zone, even on Twitter. He ignores fans and bigs up Barker and Ariel. Most of the fans don't like them. Is he insecure about his job? No. I don't really look at many of Ade's tweets. We follow each other on X, but we don't really. I mainly only get the football tweets he tweets about, to be fair. I certainly don't see him as being insufferable, mate. He's quite the same as always with me. I haven't noticed anything different. I know he's done a bit of work with Ariel, yeah. I can't say I'm Ariel's biggest fan necessarily. I think that boxing is clearly not his sport, and it shows, but hey, the zone are happy enough with him. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that one, mate, to be honest with you. That's a good question, actually. G-Man, what do your close friends think of the channel? 22k subs is impressive. Do they watch? Long and the short of it, no. They don't. They watch the odd video now and again, but very seldom. They will be more casuals. To me and them, I'm just the same old, you know. It's just something, to them it's something I do. I know, they know it's quite a good channel. They know that's the reason why I live in London, but to them, I'm just... I'm very fortunate. My friends, we've been friends since we were kids. So I grew up with my friends. So I know them, and none of them have YouTube channels and stuff like that. So it's obviously easy for me to say, but I just see them as the people I grew up with. You know, the people I used to play football with, the people I went drinking with, the people I went on weekends away with and stuff like that. And they see me as still that. So there's no real, they know I do YouTube now, but there's no real, like, they don't, it doesn't, it never really comes into the conversation, to be honest with you. Do you know what? Actually, it's funny because it's more people who I know but wouldn't really be necessarily friends with who would come up to me whenever I'm home and sore. It's like Christmas Eve. This day last week I was out. Me and my friends, we all went out for Christmas Eve drinks, and a few people who I'd know well, like I wouldn't necessarily call them friends, but like there'd be more acquaintances that I'd know would be like, oh, how's the channel going? And I didn't even know somebody knew about it. They'd ask how the channel's going. They'd ask me more than my friends would, because again, to them, I'm just me, the same guy I've always been. And I'd like to think that's how they'd always see me, to be honest with you. I wouldn't like them to be like, oh, this is the YouTube guy. Like, no, I'm the same old me. Last two comments. G-Man, likes and dislikes of London. Will you live there long? Not for the rest of my life, but yeah, I'll be there for the foreseeable. Likes, I just love the city. Just love everything about it. You know, the pubs, the life, everything. It can be a little bit, you know, it can be 100 miles an hour. I'm a country boy. You know, I'm from Dublin, yeah, but I'm not from the city. I'm from Swords, which is more country. So it can be a little bit 100 miles an hour when I'm not used to that. But that's probably one of, and the prices are insane. What made you move to London? Do you ever think you come up North England? It's way cheaper up here, I know, and the people are more friendly. I love the south of England. That's the problem. I know, I love the south of England. Moved to London just so I can be at these events more often, and you know, at the end of the day, why not just pay however much rent a month to live in London for the next year and see what you can do, rather than have to pay money to fly over and fly back once or twice a month and use your holiday days on top of that, when I can just work remotely and be there all the time. So that's why I moved there. We're going to see how this year goes, and then we'll kind of assess the situation. I don't always want to live in London. Quite frankly, I'd love to live somewhere else I'd love to do a couple of months in a different country somewhere around the world, but I don't know where yet. But that's a long way away. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And that was it. That was the last one. Oh my God, I think this has gone way over an hour. I spent so much time on these questions. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope this was a good listen. It was a good listen. It was fun talking about as well. And I'll leave it there. People, I enjoyed this. This was good, but goddamn, this went way over. I was thinking, get this done in 40 minutes. It ain't 40 minutes. It's way over that. Hope you enjoyed it. Smash the like button. Happy 2025. It is going to be a flippin' phenomenal year, people. Peace.